Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Scalzo. I'm the Director of Student Engagement here at Loyola. Some of you may have seen me over the last couple of webinars that we've had, and it's good to have you back. If this is your first orientation event, welcome. We're excited to have you all. I wanted to just kind of kick off this session and offer some housekeeping information before we roll into what it is that's going to happen. So first, this session really is geared towards parents and support people and guardians. This is really not meant to be a student session. If you are a student who has chosen to log in, hey, welcome. It's wonderful you're here, but you're going to get this information in an evergreen meeting. If you are a parent who decided to have their student come along, that's great. You can sit together and have some conversations about this, but this really is going to be geared more towards the concept of parents and guardians as support to the students as they transition to Loyola. I'll also say we use the term parent loosely. To us, that represents more than just a typical parent. That is a guardian, that's a support person, an aunt, uncle, cousin. We know that comes in all forms. So please know that we might use that language interchangeably. Tonight's event really is focused on the academic transition of our first year students. We've got a wonderful panel of folks we consider experts on campus who are here to answer questions, burning questions about the academic life on campus and maybe some of the things you're already wondering about. Some of you may have attended one of our events in June where Dr. Derrickson was able to talk a little bit about the academic life on campus. So you may have a little bit of information as background, but if not, that's okay. At the end of the session tonight, I'll let you know where you can also review back and find that session as well. One of the things that I think is exciting about this event is we have typically done an event called The Realities of College Life. So the idea here is you're going to watch a couple of videos that our evergreens, our orientation staff, produced for us. So they are very student produced videos. I think that's important to share, but they're actual situations that they themselves may have experienced during their first, particularly semester at Loyola. So after the videos finish playing, we will have a wonderful facilitator, Mr. Mark Lee, who will come on and lead us through this session. As questions come to you, there is a Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom there. Please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. I will give you one caveat. While we hope to get to every single question tonight, it's hard to tell if we will have the time. If your question is one that you want to make sure is asked or is answered at some point in time, I'd encourage you to make sure to not click the anonymous question button. What that allows us to do is when the event is over, if we didn't get to your question, we can download them, we know your email address, and one of our experts can circle back to you. So to the best of your ability, try not to click that anonymous button. Nobody else sees who's asking the question except for us panelists. So I think those were all the reminders for right now. The last thing I will say, this session is being recorded. So if you want to review it back at another time, we'll talk about that at the end. And we will also have a resource sheet of web links and phone numbers available for you after the session is over as well. So I'm going to ask my friend in our events office to go ahead and start us on the videos, and I'll see you at the end of the session. Thanks.
Hey, how are you? Honestly, exhausted. I can't believe it's only 12 o'clock and Dr. B is pushing it with the paper due Friday.
Ugh, I know it stinks. I think I'm gonna start outlining now though, so I get it done sooner rather than later. Plus, I think we're hanging out with the girls tomorrow night anyway.
Yeah, outlining sounds like a really good idea, but I think I might just watch Bachelor reruns instead.
Alright, well have fun. Just make sure you don't come to me crying like last time.
Last time was a fluke, don't worry about it.
I know, but just set a little reminder just to make sure you get it done on time.
Chill, it'll be fine.
Relax, Lauren, I'm just trying to help.
I know, but right now, I think it's Bachelor time.
Alright. Lauren, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself tonight.
What?
Are you sure you're okay? You seem pretty zoned out.
Yeah, I'm just getting kind of stressed about the paper due tomorrow. I haven't really started.
Wait, really? I'm basically almost done. I thought you started yours last night.
I don't know, I ended up watching Netflix and then I took a nap and it just didn't really get started.
Lauren, why would you do that? Lay off. All right, well, maybe you should go work on it now, and then you can have time to hang out with us tomorrow night.
I don't know, the final rose ceremony's on. I think I'm just gonna watch it and then I'm gonna start afterwards.
Okay, just make sure you get started on it. We need to hang out tomorrow night.
Sure.
Oh, I'm so happy it's Friday. It's been such a long week. I'm so excited to hang out with the girls tonight. You're coming, right?
I don't know, I have that paper for Dr. B. I haven't really done much of it. I think I still have like 5 pages left. I feel like I should probably stay in and just work on it instead.
Oh, that stings. I got mine done a little bit early so I could send it to the writing center, and knowing that we were hanging out with our friends tonight.
I know. I really should have started it earlier and gotten it done. I feel really bad, but I think I have to work on it.
Okay, well, I'll see you after, but keep working on it while I'm gone, okay?
Have fun. I know I won't.
Oh my gosh, Dr. B just posted the grades for paper. How did you do?
Honestly, not too well. I tried to submit it the night of, and it was already midnight, so I had to submit it below the word count, and it didn't go well. I tried to ask for an extension, but Dr. B said because it was the night of that it was too late, but he said that I could rewrite it to get some credit back, and I could check in with the writing center, so that's good.
Ugh, I'm sorry. I did pretty well, but I'm so glad you're getting a second chance. Hopefully you learn from this too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 6 pages doesn't work in college like it did in high school.
Yeah.
But that being said, I finished all my homework for the week, so
That's
want to
good.
grab some Boulder?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What's up, man? It's good to see you again.
Yeah, no, it's finally great to sit down and talk. I'm really excited about being on campus and everything, and I'm finally moved in. But the nerves are definitely sitting in about classes starting soon. But for sure excited about getting involved and meeting new people.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Oh my god. It's my mom. Sorry, I gotta pick this up. Hey, Mom. Yeah, I'm doing well. I know, I got the meeting later. Thank you. Yeah, sure, I'll talk to you after. Alright, bye. I'm sorry, man. My mom keeps calling me. My dad, too. It's crazy. It's like, I don't know. They've been taking college pretty hard. How about your parents?
Yeah, I think they're taking it pretty well just because my brother went to school last year, so they're used to it by now.
Yeah, okay, I wish. I mean, they're calling me so much, I feel like they're still here. They haven't given me a chance to miss them, but I'm sorry, I got a meeting with my Evergreen I gotta log on to, but it's great to see you again. Catch up later.
Hey Jack, how are you doing? How's your first month at Loyola been?
What's up, Nada? So far, so good. Getting along with my roommates well. Classes haven't been too hard. Smooth sailing. The worst part for me so far is adjusting from home, coming here. Both of my parents, they've been texting me, calling me nonstop. They miss me, I understand it. I miss them too, I love them. But I'm just trying to get this on my own, you know, get adjusted on my own pace.
Yeah, I totally understand. It can definitely be a weird feeling knowing when you're finally ready to be by yourself. Remember, they definitely are only doing this because they love you and they miss you, but if it's really bothering you and you want to say something, maybe just try to explain to them that you want to be on your own and figure things out for yourself.
That's true. I think I might bring that up next time I'm talking to them. See, with my roommate, I think our parents are just very different. He doesn't really talk to them that much. They let him be. So I feel like complaining to him isn't really a good idea because he doesn't know what I'm going through. I guess our parents are just really different when it comes to communication.
That makes total sense. Definitely bring it up to them, see how it goes. You mentioned it's tough being away from home, so if you and your roommate are looking to get involved, the activities fair is actually next week, which is an amazing opportunity to not only get involved and join new clubs and sports, but meet new people.
That's a really good idea. I think I might go next week with my roommate. It would be pretty cool to get involved in some clubs, meet some new people.
That's a really great idea. And if you need anything else, obviously I'm here for you along with the rest of our Messina team. Of course, there are other resources on campus, such as the Counseling Center, the Office of Student Support and Wellness Promotion, and more, which can help you in any way that you need in adjusting to campus life.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for having us on your screens and in your homes virtually. It's so good to be with you. I'm Mark Lee. I've been at Loyola for a long time. 34 years ago, I was in Maryland Hall on campus meeting with my advisor, probably right around this time in July, and trying to figure out, what am I going to major in? What classes am I going to take? And it's kind of crazy now, 34 years later, I'm here still, but now talking about your students and what you might expect. If this is your first session, I want to congratulate you for choosing academic support and transition. Great choice. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. And we started with these two videos just to kind of give you some ideas to think about. To what extent did those students there remind you or make you think about your own sons, daughters, students? And I'm going to say students for the most of the time, just generically, so you could say your students. One item that we want you to know is that your students also have received these videos or will be receiving these videos. And they're going to be asked to review them prior to their small group meetings. So what you're seeing, they are also seeing. So it could be a nice touchstone for conversation. And speaking of those touchstones for conversations, I'd really be interested in your impressions. Say, looking at the first video, what struck you about that idea of procrastination, and to what extent do you think that might be an issue for your student? And does that cause any feelings for you? I think about the roommate too. I thought that was kind of interesting. So there's Lauren and Regan. Regan just seemed to be, wow, what a great roommate to be able to kind of try to stay on top of that situation and try to really look after that person. Will your student be a Regan? Will be someone who will be asking about the welfare of their roommate? Or do you see your student more as a Lauren and someone who might need more looking after? In that second video, some things struck me too, and I just want to mention a couple quotes that I wrote down when I listened to that video that struck me. And one of them is that they haven't given me a chance to miss them. And I thought that was really striking. So as we care so much and we want to show that care, especially if they're away from home for the first time, to what extent are we giving our students the chance to miss us? And the other quote that I wrote down is, I'm trying to get this on my own, and get acclimated or get adjusted at my own pace. And each of our students has their own pace in getting acclimated to this new space. And each of our students have their own specific needs. You've gotten to know many of those needs from living with them for 18 years. We're just getting to know them as individuals. But what's interesting is how many patterns we see in the students who join us as first-year students, to be able to identify some of the common anxieties, to be able to even look at a timeline, to be able to say, around this time, I think that we're going to be expecting a lot more students to start feeling homesick. So we've gathered a group of individuals here to be able to kind of talk through some of those concerns that you have, to be able to discuss not only answers to questions, but maybe bring up some ideas or resources that you might not have thought about. At this next point, and please continue to type in questions as you wish, but at this point, I'd love to be able to invite our panelists to be able to talk, not only introduce themselves and their title, but to be able to tell us, what do you do? What's your connection with our first-year students? And I wondered, Tori, could I start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So my name is Victoria, or Tori Gill, and I am the director of the Academic Advising and Support Center at Loyola. You will hear that called AASC for short a lot of time. AASC is a professional advising office that helps support our undergraduate students and their faculty advisors. At Loyola, every student is assigned a faculty advisor when they come into Loyola. And when they begin, that person is actually their Messina professor. Later, when they officially declare their major, they'll be assigned a major advisor in their field of study. So while their faculty advisor should always be their primary point of contact, students are always welcome to come to my office, AASC, with any questions related to topics like choosing appropriate classes, declaring a major or minor, class registration, progress towards graduation, summer classes, AP and dual enrollment credit, and more. We do welcome appointments in our office, but we are also a walk-in office that our advisors are always available to students during normal business hours, Monday through Friday in Maryland Hall.
Thanks so much, Tori. Next on my screen, on my squares here, is Marsha Wiedefeld. Marsha, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your office?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Hi, I'm Marsha Wiedefeld, Director of Disability Support Services, and we are otherwise known as DSS. First, as a parent of 3 young adults, the last one is in her senior year. She's a super senior because of COVID. I know she's at Loyola New Orleans. I know how hard a parent or guardian works to get a student to this point. So congratulations to your student, but also congratulations to you. As Director of DSS, I want to tell you a little bit about our office and how we assist students with disabilities at Loyola. The students DSS work with have physical or mental impairments that range from learning disabilities to ADHD to vision impairment and hearing loss to chronic illnesses such as depression, anxiety, Crohn's disease to autistic spectrum disorders, and so on. In DSS, we work to remove barriers that might get in the way of students' ability to live and learn at Loyola. For example, we work closely with faculty to provide students test accommodations like extra time, and we also provide many other academic accommodations. We work with Student Life to help a student get the modifications that they might need to live in Loyola housing. We work with dining services, transportation and parking, technology services, and so on. There is no cookie cutter formula to the accommodations and support that we help arrange, and DSS reviews every student's request on an individualized basis. If you have any questions about whether your student would benefit by registering with DSS, I want to direct you to the QR code. Is this my left or right shoulder? It's
off your left.
Left. Okay, it's like, it's over my left shoulder. If you take a picture of it, you will go to the DSS website. If you take a picture with your smartphone, or you can go to www.loyola.edu/DSS and to get our contact information and our location and all that good stuff. As I mentioned, again, I want to congratulate you parents. You've done a great job. In DSS, we are happy to answer parents' questions about how your student registers with DSS. However, once your student registers with DSS, we can only talk in more general terms because of confidentiality. So if you have any questions, again, click that take a picture of the QR code and email me, and I'm happy to get back to you.
Thanks so much, Marsha. Next, Dr. Alyssa Derrickson, could you introduce yourself and talk about your office? And you're muted, yeah.
Hi, as Mark said, my name is Alyssa, and I'm the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and that's a title which doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what I do, but I direct offices and oversee offices that are involved in student success, like AASC and Messina and the study that does peer tutoring. But really our office is sort of the academic side of being a student advocate while balancing sort of the academic content and rigor of the school. So in some ways, I deal with students that are in difficulties with MARC, with honor code violations. I deal with students that are not in good academic standing, but we also work a lot with students that are just having particular problems. I work primarily with juniors and seniors, and this coming semester, Dr. Mary Beth Mudrick will be working with first and second years, but she's on an interim basis while the permanent assistant dean, Dr. Rodney Parker, is on assignment elsewhere on the university. So I just wanted to point out one thing that changes, and it was talked a little bit in the PowerPoint that I provided, and that's that your role is changing now as you come in as as your student enters Loyola. We do like to treat them as an adult, which means that we have expectations that they'll read their email, for example, their Loyola email, and they will contact their professors when something is wrong. But we do know that freshmen have a transition period, and we do try to support them. Different from high school is that you will not, I hope, be expecting to contact their faculty. So we discourage parents from contacting faculty directly. And I tell faculty if they get a contact from a parent to bring it to me. The people that might talk to you would be the chair of the department that you're concerned with, and definitely my office. I'll talk with you. But do know that we need a release to tell you anything about how your student is doing. And so you can take a look on that PowerPoint. It talks a bit about FERPA, which is a federal law that says that I can't really say anything about their academics unless your student comes to me and signs a release and says that I can. But I can talk about policy and give you some ideas about that. And I'll take any questions later on, but Mark, I think, has one more person to introduce.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. So save the best for last, right? Mike Puma, if you could introduce yourself and your department.
No, thank you, Mark. And hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. My name is Mike Puma. I'm the director of Messina, which is our first-year living learning program for all first-year students. All of your students should have a Messina course on their fall schedule, and then another course they will take with the same students in the spring, another seminar course. When people ask me what I do, what Messina is or what I do, my elevator pitch, for my family and my friends is that I try to make first-year students sophomores. And then after that, successful graduates. And we do that through a network of community building through the Messina program. So the Messina program offers your students a way to connect with 2 faculty members, one in the fall, one in the spring. One will serve as their first-year advisor until they pick a major, like Tori mentioned before. But we also have someone in the room who's an administrator on campus, someone like me or Sarah or Tori, who serve as a mentor for those students. And we're there in the fall and spring semester. We travel with the students to the spring class as a support person on campus. And then we have a third person to that support network. That's the student leader called the Evergreen. Your students have been meeting with Evergreens this summer, and they will have an Evergreen that continues with them in the fall and spring with that class. And so you have a peer leader, you have an administrator on campus, and you have a faculty member. And we think that really creates a big web of support for students in their first year of college. We try to keep them one step ahead of all the decisions they make at Loyola, all that they will have to make. And I think by the time they get to the spring semester, it's not about transition to college as much anymore academically and socially. It's thinking about sophomore year and thinking about who you want to become, what you want to do with your talents and gifts. And so we do a lot of visioning, a lot of discernment, a lot of vocational discernment, getting students ready for sophomore year, junior year, and senior year and beyond. So that's the Messina program. There's also, for those of your students living on campus, we house them in proximity to students in their class so they can create communities with those students residentially, but also with other students living around them in similar classes taught to the same Messina themes. Messina also coordinates the Common Text program. This year, the book is the Master Plan, and your students have received a copy of that book through their email, Loyola email. They can access that book on Google Play. We have a contest associated with the book and the Common Text series this summer, and we do a whole bunch of programming on and off campus to support the book and that kind of common intellectual moment for all the first year students. So we'd be happy to talk about Messina, how we help students transition. I've been at Loyola for 19 years. It's a wonderful place, and we're glad you're part of our community now.
Thank you all for those introductions. You know, when you meet a new person, sometimes you get to know their lingo, and you hear some of the jargon that gives you some insight into what's important. And you might have already heard that word discernment spoken. And, you know, that's kind of a key word, a key theme in Jesuit schools. And if any of you have questions or would like to talk about that, I'm sure any of us would be happy to address it. One thing I didn't address is my own role here at the university is I'm Director of Technology and Graduate Student Services. So I do work with the graduate students, but my intersection with your students, hopefully not a great deal, is working with the Honor Code and academic integrity. So I help lead the Honor Council, and we are concerned about promoting academic integrity in our studies. Unfortunately, at times, we must also enforce policies when students don't make particularly good decisions. And I'm happy to talk more about what that looks like if you have questions about it. I just want to remind you that our lines are open, if you will, to be able to ask questions that you're curious about, and don't be shy. I know when I'm on these kinds of things as a visitor, when you know, if I'm learning about something, I'm thinking, oh, is that going to be a silly question? Is that going to be number one, as Sarah already mentioned, no one's going to know it's you except for we as panelists. It's not public. And number two, if you have a question, it's likely that others do as well. I'd like to start with one that we received early on, and I wanted to address this to Alyssa Derrickson. And if I could read this or summarize it. And this is a question that's on many of our minds, having to do with COVID and the whole environment that is so unusual. And the question is, how is Loyola recognizing this challenge of COVID and the anticipated gap in best practice learning skills that would normally follow the students into freshman year? Has Loyola anticipated much impact from this gap? And how are they getting ahead of the potential risk versus being reactive? Alyssa, could you address that a little bit? And again, you're muted, I'm sorry.
I'm so used to small meetings not being muted. So thanks so much for that question, Mike. I mean, from what I've seen from students last year, we had students last year who had experienced in their senior year this issue, and during the fall also were remote, and you're right, it created quite a challenge. We saw those students, you know, really zoning out and not being able to really connect with their classes by the end of the year. And I'm sure that's true for this incoming class during their high school semester, that it was very difficult. And I know they're all very excited to come to a regular class. So one of the things that concerns me is that, you know, there's always high anticipation for college and what it's going to be like. But I think it will be even higher for this class. And so we worry sort of about, you know, their expectations coming down to earth with reality. I really do know that in Messina, that small group setting was very helpful to first year students. And we do have a fairly robust support system, as Mike alluded to. All of the Messina advisors will meet in the first week or two with each student individually for a one-on-one to sort of talk about what's going on in their life. And we encourage all the advisors to end with the questions, is there anything that I should know about you? And that oftentimes is a place where students will come up with things that they are concerned about. Remember that we do have these supports. We have a writing center for writing papers that was mentioned in the video that can certainly be used before the night before papers due. And we have peer tutoring for every subject that students would need through this study. I think that one of the things that students should know is that professors on campus really do like talking with students. And if there is a problem in a course, students should be proactive and reach out to the professor first for any questions that they might have. Mike might also want to address that since Messina has such a role in this.
Yeah, I think we try to be proactive, and we've already been thinking about what might look different this year, returning after a long time of hybrid learning or virtual learning. During Fall Welcome Weekend, which takes place right after move-in, there's always an academic support panel or some kind of interaction with academic supports on campus that Messina helps to facilitate. And I think this will be a really important moment for the students to think about not just what the supports are, but changing the culture of saying it's okay to ask for support and help. I think that's what some of the biggest barriers is, really encouraging them that, when you have a concern come up, don't let it build and don't let it kind of, get more severe or more acute. Try to, so that if there's a first paper that we're not really sure, if a student doesn't really know how to handle something, that's the time to make an appointment at the Writing Center. And so we want to make it the norm that students are used to asking for help or support and sharing that either with their evergreen, their mentor, or their faculty member up front. All faculty do also hold office hours, which are actually hours that they want students to come to their offices to ask questions that they actually just set aside for that purpose. So we are going to, I think, tweak at what we've done in the past. We usually invite the Writing Center, the library, the Career Center, the study, and also the counseling center to our academic support panel, because the academic support and the counseling support do have a lot of overlap. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating, if you're not kind of tending to your basic needs, you're not going to be at your best in the academic setting as well. So we do want students to think about all those supports as being connected and holistic. So we reinforce that then once Messina starts through the enrichment sessions we have on a weekly basis. I know time management and stress management are two of our biggest kind of enrichment sessions that a lot of groups do in the fall semester. Academic integrity also is reinforced just to kind of keep students thinking about that and that priority. So we have the Fall Welcome Weekend supports that will be kind of acknowledging that this is returning to classroom work is new for a lot of people after a year and a half away. And then we'll support it through Messina then. As we go into the semester.
Thanks.
Mike,
And I just
go ahead.
I just want to add in that it's not just the Messina faculty member that students can go to support. Pretty much any of their faculty members for any class. Most people have drop-in office hours, and if their office hours conflict with your class schedule, your students' class schedule, most faculty will also have by appointment also. So just faculty love talking to students one-on-one, and sometimes it's hard to keep them on task, just as it is to keep the students on task, but please encourage them.
Yeah, and that is a skill I think that may be lacking for many of our students who have become accustomed to online work. It'll be a transition to be meeting students in person or meeting others in person again, and how to interact in person. And of course, we will do our best to be able to support them with that. Historically, we've collected a lot of data and we've asked students, incoming students and their parents, and we've said, what are the top 3 resources that you would consult if you were experiencing adjustment difficulties? And when we ask parents, the number 1 resource that they identified was, well, ourselves, parents, the parents themselves. They'll come to mom or pop first. And then maybe a friend or a roommate or maybe a counselor. We ask the students the same questions, and year after year, we see some of the same patterns. And number 1, the students say, unfortunately, is not necessarily the parents. It's going to be their friend or their roommate. So yes, you've been bringing them up for 18 years and you've built all that trust, but what are they going to do? They're going to ask their roommate or friend if there's a problem, if they're experiencing adjustment. Now, number 2 and 3, I do have to say, we consistently see that they'll talk to parents, number 2 usually, and 3, the counseling center. more and more students are, there's less of a stigma. Now, I think it's a wonderful thing that many of our students are seeing this as a resource that they can use, a tool, how wonderful it is to have a professional listener. And there's not that stigma to say, oh, I have to see a counselor. Mike, if we could come back to you, there was a question about evergreens. And the question is, when will my student meet their evergreen, and will it be at their first Messina class or during move-in? And I wonder if you might also just preface, just as a review of what is the evergreen and what's their role?
Sure. Evergreens are our student leaders who support students through orientation and the whole first year through Messina. So your students have been meeting with an evergreen this summer who will probably not be the one that's in their Messina class. They were kind of, those groups were assigned before we actually had the classes, students registered for classes. So starting on the first day of move-in, and then really the first orientation activities is when they will meet their evergreens. Each student will have 1 or 2 evergreens in their group. It will probably be kind of the first meeting before anything other formal things happen during fall welcome weekend. And then throughout the weekend, there'll be at least 1, if not more, opportunities each day to rejoin as an orientation group to spend more time with the evergreens. So the evergreens are typically sophomores, juniors, and seniors who applied. It's a very actually highly sought after position on campus. So it's a lot of training being given to them about how to support peers and to give advice, give encouragement, give motivation to first year students. These are students who wanted that role because they had someone do that for them their first year. So it's a very altruistic, I think, kind of position on campus for students. So the evergreen will be probably the first person they meet, but there will also be opportunities during that weekend to meet with their advisor for a common text discussion and an opening meeting, and then also with the Messina mentor to get to know them before the first classes the first week. You probably won't have a lot of interaction with the students evergreen, I would say. Typically, we want the evergreens to kind of have that trust built between the first year student, and then they can help them kind of navigate the campus along with the mentor and the faculty member. But every student will have at least 1 or 2 in their group starting in September, and then for the whole academic year.
Thank you for that. And Sarah, also have this with this question being about evergreens. Is there anything that you'd like to emphasize or add here?
Sure, Mark. I think Mike did a really great job of capturing what the evergreens do. I think just reinforcing that this is a volunteer position for the students. I know sometimes for parents, it's like, well, my student's evergreen said X, Y, or Z. Sometimes it's remembering that these students have had their own experiences and they're sharing advice and they're sharing opinions. And so while we do our best to train them on what they should or shouldn't say, they are not necessarily quoting what I would say is gospel truth all the time. So sometimes we have to take some of that with a grain of salt. I would also say for those of you on the call who might have that inkling like, oh, if my student is having a hard time, I'm just going to call their evergreen. And I would say, please do not do that. It's really not an appropriate relationship for parents to have with our student leaders. If you have a concern about your student or their relationship with their evergreen or anything like that, the student engagement office, my professional staff, would be the best ones to work through. And I would say the same thing goes if they're living on campus for their resident assistant. So as parents, when you have questions about your student, please do your best to work through the professional staff on campus rather than with the student leaders. So that's what I would add. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for that. Just switching gears a little bit regarding classes. There's a question about if a student has to take prerequisite classes ahead of the major core classes, what's done to kind of keep them on track to graduate on time? And maybe if I could ask Alyssa or Tori what your thoughts about this might be.
I think maybe Tori can answer this and talk a little bit about student planning. Very little.
Yeah, sure. So my inclination is that this question is related to math courses and students who might have to take a lower level math course before they can take an upper level math course that may be required for their particular major. 99.9%, I would say, of our majors are super flexible in that a student will have ample time to take those lower level courses. For example, pre-calculus, one semester before they have to take calculus in the next semester. There's plenty of time within their 4 years to kind of take those prereqs for those upper level math courses. The one exception to that is probably the engineering major, where students need to take general physics and calculus 1 in the very first semester. So for students who don't place directly into calculus 1 in the first semester and they want to be an engineering major, I would just encourage those students to work with their Messina advisor, as well as come to AASC, and we can help take a look at what classes are offered when it's best to take those classes. Do they maybe want to look into a summer class or something like that? It's a little bit different for every student. So I would encourage those students to reach out to AASC and we can help them out. What Dr. Derrickson was referring to, student planning, is our newly launched web registration and course planning tool that students will be more introduced to once they get to campus in the fall. They're using it a little bit right now with their advisors as they finish building their schedule, but they'll be introduced to more of its capabilities in the fall through Messina and through my office. And they can take a look at all of the courses required for the core and their intending major, and they can kind of plan those out a few semesters in advance as far as when they should be taking those courses. So again, Loyola, lots of flexibility for most of the majors. If they have any questions, please feel free to direct your student to AASC and we will definitely help them out.
The idea of a major creates a great amount of anxiety, perhaps unnecessarily so, for not only for many students, but for many family members. And I think it's good to kind of remind ourselves, what is the major? And so many, I'm an advisor as well, and I tend to be assigned to advisees who are undecided on majors or still exploring. And there's an idea that this is going to determine the rest of my life, capital R. And as many of you know, in your own histories, your own academic histories, how many of us was that the case, that the major determined what our future, what the rest of our life would be? Not to say it is not important, but sometimes that can truly make it more difficult for a student, kind of paralyze a student in making decisions because it becomes so weighty that they don't know what to do. Related to this is the role of the advisor. Many of your students have not had an advisor before, maybe a guidance counselor, but an advisor, what is their role? And I wonder, Tori or Alyssa, could you speak to how might students make the best use of this, of their advisor as a resource?
Sure, I'll start in and then Tori can pop in. And I know Mike has a bit that he could say on this too, but advising is a really big part of Messina. It was intentional that one of their faculty members also be their advisor. And the advising relationship, from my perspective, changes as the student advances through college, as they move from being a first-year student to being a declared student. Their relationship and their actual advisor will change. But at this early stage, their advisor is really helping them to understand the structure of the curriculum and help them to not tell them, but help ask them questions that will help them to figure out what they want to do next. And so really the advisor's role is to help the student to make a path that makes sense for them. And also in many ways to be supportive of them and to try to get the students to think more about their strengths instead of, sometimes we hear students say something like, I'm not good at X or Y. And oftentimes that's, I'm not good at math, or I can't read philosophy, or, you know, and instead of focusing on what you can't do, to be more of a positive influence on them. Tori and Mike have something they might want to add to that.
Add to it. As Dr. Derrickson kind of said, I think of the advisor as more of a guide for students. So it is not somebody who's going to tell your student they need to take, they'll recommend things and they'll guide them along their way. But at the same time, they help your student develop agency. So knowing how to act for themselves and how to find the answers for themselves. So they may point the student to the academic catalog, which contains all of Loyola's policies and procedures and requirements, rather than tell them the answer. They may say, oh no, that's in the catalog. You can find that answer yourself. Or they may recommend that a student reach out to a specific faculty member or a specific office to discuss a certain concern, but not do it for them. So they're really kind of, they're a mentor, they're a guide, they're there to help students understand and learn, but also to help students develop into independent thinkers who have agency and can kind of find the answers and make their path for themselves. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Agency was a word that I was going to use, and all I would say with that too is that, you know, we want the students that by the end of this first year in their Messina year to have the agency to kind of look up things themselves, to advocate for themselves, to find the answers. But the advisors also can sit with students who are really struggling, not necessarily between a good and bad choice, but two good choices. More often than not, we have students who have two options that are both fine and very good. And they have to kind of look within to say, what's going to bring me the most joy? Where am I going to feel the most kind of, you know, energetic about something, the most capable, the most where I want to dedicate my time to. So I think that's like the wise friend moment, that mentor moment for an advisor, really kind of sitting with a student. And, you know, because they're in class with these students at least one semester, they're more than just this is more than just a meeting with the student. They know their work, they know how they take tests, they know how they write papers, how they present in class. So it really is an authentic relationship that we hope continues even after they have a major advisor. We'll find a lot. We do Messina reunions every 4 years. So in 4 years, the seniors will get invited back by their mentors or advisors to come back and just kind of have like a little celebratory moment before graduation. And you see the bond that's created. And I think we really want that to kind of be, that just shows us that something's happening in the first year that we want them to continue. So that's what an advisor is. And that's how special it could be if students kind of take the time to also invest in that relationship.
It would be a great waste if your student simply uses an advisor to say, can you sign this for me? I need to meet with you to remove my hold. We have a wonderful resource. And the reason we have the student planning and the technology is it frees time. That time between advisor and advisee to have an actual conversation rather than just to look at a book or look at a computer and say, okay, you need this course, and this course, check. No, the good advising is actually speaking more deeply about why should I take this course? Well, I ask many of my students to learn how to do informational interviews, to learn more about someone. And it's a wonderful thing for your student if they want to actually conduct an informational interview of their advisor. How did you choose your major? What went into that decision making? What do you think makes a good course or a bad course? And to what extent was this choice and major important for you, or did it matter? So these kinds of questions are ones that really kind of take advantage of the richness of a relationship, rather than just using an advisor as a computer or something like that. We have a final question. Time goes so fast. And this one is, what recommendations do you have for parents on how often we should be communicating with our student? You know, harkening back to that second vignette that we looked at. And I would ask this of any of you. Do you have any recommendations or thoughts about that?
I think probably Marcia and I might want to answer this question since we've had students go through these areas. I really appreciate the question. My daughter graduated from Loyola a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. And a lot of students do have very close bonds with their parents in high school, particularly in this era. And so you may be communicating with them a lot through text or whatever. But I think that what you want to do in these next 2 months is have a talk with them about how much communication they want with you and let them drive this. And you will probably find that at some point they may want to modify this and be open for that. I would maybe caution against having a set time like each day during drive-in that you're going to talk, because at some point, this is still happening. My daughter's 25, and we've noticed that in the last month or so, her texting and conversations have dropped off. And finally I said to my husband, I think she has a new boyfriend. You know, and finally brought that up, you know, and so at some point, their personal life, they don't want to share with you until they want to share it. And so don't get too attached to a routine, because at some point, for whatever reason, they may just have a busy scholastic load, you know, they may just have a busy academic load. Don't freak out. And so I think the point is to let them drive the amount of communication that you have and the mode of the communication, whether it's by phone or texting. Marcia, your experience.
As a professional or a parent? I think your advice is great. You know, I have 3 kids, and they're, you know, I have one who, you know, I'm on speed dial, and I have one that I'll text him and say, "Are you alive? You need to answer my text." So yeah, you have to gauge your kid. One suggestion I have is, if you have a son or daughter who's dealing with something, you know, physical, mental, emotional, you might want to lay eyes on them, or, you know, it's a long time from, you know, dropping them off to Parents' Weekend or Thanksgiving. And if you feel like something detrimental is going on, I suggest you lay eyes on them, you know, do a Zoom call. And then if you're concerned, make sure you contact the right people on campus, you know, the counseling center or the health center, disability support services. You know, if you're concerned that there's a health related concern or mental health related concern, or, you know, if anything else you feel is going awry. Yeah, but I think your advice, Alyssa, is let the student drive it, so somewhat, but also remember you're paying that phone bill, so you deserve some respect, and calls should be returned every now and then. So that's my advice.
I would, you know, Marcia, I'm glad you said that, because I think in this era of coming out of this pandemic, it's still in it in many ways too. You've been home so much together over the last years in ways that you may not have been, you know, before. I think it's okay to have that conversation on both ends. What do I need support too? And be a little bit vulnerable in that as well, you know, and say, like, maybe it can be a shared conversation that you just plan to revisit 3 to 4 weeks into the semester, you know. And I think if they can see you as kind of saying, I'm not doing this because I don't trust you. I'm doing this because I think I'm going to need some support too in this new kind of, you know, relationship we're going to have, you know, being at college, being at home. So, you know, Zoom is a great new resource that maybe we didn't think about 2 years ago too. So think about that too. And I think that's, you'll hear Dr. Spearman in a few weeks when she speaks to you, if she hasn't done so already, talk about emerging adulthood. And this is kind of a new phase in the relationship between parent and child. So this is a great opportunity to kind of start setting that, like, you know, I talk to my mom now probably more than I did in college, right? I mean, and so that hopefully will happen, and that it's because our relationship evolves, you know, I think over time. So don't be afraid to maybe put it in that frame also. And, you know, you can have that, start that new type of kind of setting together and then revisit it as the semester kind of unfolds.
I think I speak for the panel in saying that it's really been a pleasure to be able to address some of your questions, to be able to get insights to the things that you're thinking about and care about with your students. And if you liked this, well, guess what? There's more. We will have some upcoming sessions. And Sarah, could you, I'll hand it over to you to finish up.
Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you to our panelists. I think it's really nice to hear from the experts rather than when questions come into our office and I tap dance around what I know. So I do want to just kind of share a couple of things with you. I realize where we are on time. The first thing is, if you have not yet visited our orientation website, it has recordings of all of our past sessions, as well as information and links to register for the future sessions that we have. So our website is loyola.edu/orientation. We make it really easy. You are also welcome to email our office at any time, orientation@loyola.edu. If you don't know who to ask, we will direct your question to the proper person. We will also send out a resource guide tomorrow to all who are here tonight, and we'll also post that on our website along with a recording of this event. I think 2 more reminders, well, and then a plug. So a reminder, Dr. Derrickson mentioned, remember, the students need to be checking their Loyola email. We are trying to contact them through that. I know that advisors are contacting them through that for meetings and such. If they have not gotten into the habit of that, please, please, please make sure they do it. And if they have trouble with it, they can email my office and we'll help them. But if they're not checking their Loyola email, they're likely missing out on some important information. The next thing is a quick plug for you all. We are coming up on the final days of registration for our pre-fall programs. These are, there are 6 different programs that happen the couple of days before Fall Welcome Weekend does. And they really are an awesome opportunity for students to connect with a smaller group of peers prior to the full orientation program. I would encourage you, the students were sent another reminder this week about registering if they're interested. Each program is different. They have some small fees associated with it, but again, that can be found through our orientation website. The last thing, as Mike mentioned, we do have a session very similar to this in 2 weeks, where our Dean of Students, Dr. Christina Spearman, and a number of our experts who will work with the students really outside the classroom will be available to answer your questions about kind of transition to life at Loyola, campus involvement, and belonging and inclusion on campus. So we would strongly recommend you check that out. And again, the registration link is on our website. Again, thank you so much for your time. I know that a virtual orientation is not what we all want to be doing right now. We're so anxious to meet folks in person, but I think the fact that you took some time out of your night to learn a little bit more about our academic life on campus is really going to suit you and your students well. So good luck, and we hope to see you soon at another webinar. Thank you all.